My potatoes are dying. Welcome to a simple life. The garden's coming along. Let me show you what we have. I have to say, Christine, she's a genius. She's amazing. She came, she helped me prune my tomatoes, and my tomato plants are absolutely covered in tomatoes, to the point where I'm actually gonna have her come and take another look to see if we need to do some more pruning, because once again, I'm new to the whole pruning thing with tomatoes, not pruning in general. So these are all canning tomatoes. They're also determinate, so these should all get ripe pretty close at the same time. This is a different variety, and I can't remember if this is determinate or indeterminate. We got a bunch more over here, and they're just doing amazing. We've been getting a lot of cucumbers, and they've been being eaten. When it comes to the jalapenos, we have a lot of flowers on. We have a lot of small peppers coming, and a couple big ones. Ooh, there's a nice big one down here. I should probably pick that. Now, when it comes to the broccoli, we've taken a cutting off of a couple of these, and then we have this other variety, and this other variety takes about 20 days longer than that one. It's a fractal-like broccoli, and it is delicious. It's really good. And so anyways, we got those. I have some broccoli back here that needs to be cut. It's actually maybe a day too late, so I'm gonna have to cut that right away. I'll cut that today. Then when it comes to the Brussels sprouts are doing phenomenal. We got a little bit of damage here. I'm gonna need to look at this and see what's causing this. I'm not sure what's causing these little yellow spots. I'm getting some on my broccoli as well. So I'm not sure if it's a disease or something, but this is the first time we've seen this damage. I was just in here the other day and didn't see it. So curious. This is curious. I'm not sure why we're seeing that. The Brussels sprouts I've been planting in waves because I like to have some ripe in winter. I like to have multiple ripe in winter. So we've been planting them in waves. We'll see how this takes and how it works. They have a long way in front of them until they're actually going to give us any Brussels sprouts. And what I don't want is I don't want them to be stressed out now when they don't need to be. Okay, now show you a few successes and I'll show you some failures. One of our successes is we have some radishes that are going to seed. Actually, a bunch of my radishes are going to seed. I want to see if we can get seeds off of them. I've never done this with radishes before. I've done it with kale, I've done it with butter lettuce, but I've never done it with radishes. So we're gonna see if it worked with radishes this year. I left a bunch of these in here just to see, about 6 or 7 of them, to see if they would go to seed. And if they go to seed, that would be really great, because then I can get some seeds off this variety I really like. The variety is a giant crimson radish, and they're really buttery with a little radish at the end. They're very good. Okay, let's talk about a big failure. We're talking complete failure. I say that with a big smile on my face. My bed. Well, it pretty much did nothing. You can't fail harder than getting absolutely nothing out of a bed. So let me talk about what happened, and I'll tell you kind of what I would change and I'll tell you what I'm going to change going in the future, and I'm going to try this again because we're not done working with this method. Here's what happened is I tried this is probably about a year-old horse manure compost. How do I know it's good compost? Well, if you see, there's a little bit of tufts of grass popping up, but mostly that is probably from some grass that got picked up when we were picking up the compost. That's most likely not from the compost itself. And why do I say that's probably the case? Well, this thing should be covered in grass if it had a bunch of grass seed in it. The reason why it should be covered in grass if it had a bunch of grass seed in it is because we've been trying a different method. We've been trying these little sprinklers to get the seeds started. Because what I noticed was this compost, okay, it really, all the moisture is down about 1 inch or 2. So what we did was we came in, we started using these and watering them for a good amount of time so that way we get a lot of moisture on the top. And with the idea that if we had moisture on the top, it would help the seeds germinate, and then the moisture that was underneath would kind of help keep the seeds going. Well, it's been about 3 weeks and we're seeing basically nothing. And when I say basically nothing, there's a few little seeds here and there popping up, but every time something pops up, it then just dies. And so I'd been warned about this from a fellow farmer who had said, hey, listen, you got to be careful with anything that's really airy like a horse manure compost, because while it's amazing and it's got all the nutrients you need, it's very balanced, it is very fluffy, and in turn they get air pruned in a way. It's kind of like that. So this bed has been a complete failure, but that's okay, because the good part is I didn't do a whole entire greenhouse like this. I did one 24-foot section, tested it out, and we learned that this isn't going to work. Now, it's not going to work for direct seeding. Other things it will probably work great for, but just not for direct seeding. Every couple days I'll see a few pop up, and I'll go back and check on them, and they're dead. Okay, speaking of things that are dying, my potatoes are dying, and they're dying in a healthy way. And now we are in the zone of my potatoes are basically, they're putting all the food down into the potatoes, and they're no longer putting food into the leaves. When you start seeing the potato tops turn yellow, that's when it's time to stop watering. And well, for us, our soil's isn't crazy when it comes to drainage, so stopping the watering just means that we're no longer introducing a bunch of water. There's still plenty of moisture in the ground. Now, when it comes to the potato towers, that's a whole nother beast. They've gotten really short, but we really don't have anything doing, kind of turning yellow and wilting back. We have had to start watering more aggressively, and it's because we had hotter weather, but you can see there's a lot going on. I mean, there is a lot going on. This is not, I mean, these stalks are just massive, and everything is really, really growing well. I can't really complain about potatoes when we have potatoes that look like this. I mean, seriously, you know, it's kind of hard to complain about anything when your potatoes look like that. I'm quite excited. So while some of our potatoes are dying back, and that's part of it, others of our potatoes are just going bonkers. We planted them actually about 5 days before we planted the other ones. And so the fact that these are still going off like gangbusters and those ones are starting to die back, it's just interesting to me, because I would have expected them to both land at about the same time. These had so many more nutrients than the ones in my garden. So I think these, while they took a little longer to start, I think there's a lot more going on in them, because, well, there's a lot more nutrient-wise. Now, I want to show you some of our fruit trees, because we have a lot of fruit trees. And we'll give a little update with our fruit trees. Okay, this is one of our pear trees, and you can see it's fairly loaded. I'm really happy with it. We have I think we have 4 different varieties of pears on the property. We have a Bartlett, a Asian pear, a Bosque pear, and one other. I can't remember what it is. Now, when it comes to apple trees, we have like 15 different apple trees, and I don't even know them all. Generally, I know when they get ripe because I start eating them, and then we press them into cider. So we also have a lot of our apple trees are really starting to come on thick, like really thick. You can see, now some of these apple trees really need to be pruned back, but they are coming on thick. And here's one over here that's coming on really good. And I think this is a king apple, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about that. But these guys are coming on really, really well. And they're right next to the pigs who are eating a bunch of tomatoes today. And so, yeah, these guys are coming on really well. And we have a bunch going back this way towards Herman's cabin. And we have an amazing crop coming on this year. And I say that after I just pruned a bunch of the apple trees back. Last year, we got nothing when it came to apples, pears, and prunes, and plums. And the reason was we got really nice weather last spring, and then it rained for a week, and so everything flowered, and then everything got rained on, and so all of the buds and all the pollen and everything basically just hit the ground, and nothing got pollinated. So this year it looks like we're getting a bumper crop. At least that's what it looks like. And here's some prunes right here. Here you go. Here's some Italian. I think these are Italian prunes, if I'm not mistaken. And these are delicious. This isn't the best tree. We have a few other trees that are a little bit better, but this is a good tree. Now let me show you the figs, because the figs, they're coming along and they look delicious. So these are the fig trees, and they're a little bit of a mess, but it's okay. We've talked about me pruning them, and so, but we got some really good looking figs on these. couple different varieties. We got some Desert King. Okay, these are the brown turkeys, and they just have a slightly different shape to them, and so they're also very good. Between the Desert Kings and the brown turkeys, I really like the Desert Kings a lot more, but it's going to be different for everybody's environment and everybody's farm. Right now, like, you know, typically where you want to put your figs are like in the sun. They love the sun. But here in Oregon, we only get one crop. We don't get two crops like you get down in California or Arizona or somewhere that's a lot warmer. And so what I have found is the trees without irrigation, if you don't put any irrigation on them, they actually need a little less sun. And they do really good with a little less sun if you're just gonna dry farm them. Now, if you're gonna water them every day, you can get away with doing all kinds of other stuff with like irrigation, and you could probably put them in direct sun. But here on this property, the ones that have been left with direct sun, they have all died off. And they died off for multiple reasons. Some of them have damage from rodents. Some of them just didn't do good in a drought. They didn't have a great root system. And so because they didn't have a great root system, they just didn't do great. So this patch, on the other hand, has done amazing. And so because this patch has done amazing, I'm going to continue to work this patch, because if it's not broken, don't fix it type of deal. So we're really excited about the figs coming on. Now, I'm sure you're saying, Cal, you've talked about figs and prunes and apples and pears, but don't you have grapes? We do. We have a lot of grapes. The variety I'm going to show you right now is a little bit later, but they're doing really good. And so you can see we have a bunch of these, and these go get really big, but they are absolutely delicious. And then 2 rows over, we have an earlier variety. Herman calls them early blues. That's not their name. He got it cutting from a local farmer like 20 some years ago. These are an earlier variety right here, and I'll show you and you'll see the difference in maturity. These are much more mature when it comes to just overall size. These guys put on really, really heavy. So it's a little blue fruit. They're very tasty. They're not my favorite. I think my favorite is, Herman pronounces them Steuben. They're my favorite. They taste a lot like candy. We really like to make grape juice out of those because it's just the best grape juice. It's so stinking good. And then we just put it in the freezer. We have a whole freezer we just fill with gallon jugs of grape juice during the whole entire year. That's where we get our grape juice from. Thank you so much for joining us today on A Simple Life. Have a good one. Bye.